Welcome back to the Men of Iron podcast. We're here with Aaron Faro today at Messiah University up here in Camp Hill, Pennsylvania. So, Aaron, thanks for joining the podcast today. Thanks for taking some time out of your day to do this. If you wouldn't mind, just giving some background as we get started about either kind of like your story, your family, any hobbies you do, just so people watching can have like a little bit idea of who is Aaron Faro.
Yeah. Nice. Well, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it. Me here at Messiah, I work here at Messiah University Athletics, the associate head coach of the men's soccer team, and then I direct a sports ministry program called Aroma here at Messiah. So that's kind of what I've been doing. I've been here at Messiah for the last 16 years, and I'm an alum and spent some time in sports ministry between graduating at Messiah and then coming back in the roles that I'm in. I grew up in upstate New York. My dad was a college athletic director and coach, and so athletic sports have been my background like my whole life. I'm now a girl dad. Got two teenage girls, 8th grade, 10th grade. Married to my college sweetheart, Christine. We met here at Messiah. She works here as well in athletics and strength and conditioning. And so just been a great partner in ministry for me at every stage of things. Hobbies, things I like to do. I still really, what's that?
That's outside of all that.
Yeah, it keeps me pretty busy.
Yeah.
Now I'm like a taxi driver for my kids. They're in that phase where they're in stuff, but they can't get there themselves. So I do a lot of that. I love staying active myself. I love running, biking, swimming, playing soccer still. So I do a lot of that and do a lot of that with other men. It's a great way to stay connected and related to guys in my life by being side by side and working hard together and doing some things like that.
For sure. We just were talking about this beforehand, but so Messiah men's soccer team, they have a 5-minute mile pace, and how many years? Aaron still can do it to this day. So how many years have you been doing that now?
I did it every year when I was a player, and I've just kept doing it. So
that's good.
26 years.
26 years.
Now,
okay. So if you're listening to this, if this is the beginning of the year and you're getting your fitness goals in, just know that some guy's been running a 5-minute mile for 26 years.
Yeah. So those of you guys out there who think you're old, I try to remove those obstacles.
That's right.
We might be old, but we can still do hard stuff. So
that's right.
Yeah.
Cool. Now, and when did you graduate from Messiah?
I graduated in 2003.
Okay, 2003. Okay, cool. Also, I know you don't want to brag or anything, but how many, this is for people out there, this is a small recruiting pitch for Messiah University for men's soccer and Aroma. How many national championships have you been a part of, either as a player or as a coach?
We have 11 in our program.
Okay.
I was a part of 2 as a player, and I've been a part of 5 as a coach.
Okay. Yeah. There you go. If you're a young male out there playing soccer anywhere and have faith and interest in playing soccer, come to Messiah University. So,
spoiler alert, it's not even nearly the best part. So
That's right. As we kind of get into this, kind of like with your coaching and stuff, obviously as a player, played here at Messiah, graduated in 2003. What kind of led you to your role now of being an assistant soccer coach, and then also running Aroma? How did those doors open, or kind of what led you? I know say your dad's been involved in some similar roles and stuff, but what kind of either one led you to this moment, or also what do you enjoy kind of about being able to do both of those things?
Well, growing up, there was really a great faith foundation in my home. But sports were always a really important part of my life as well. And I think there was a deep desire that God had put in me to see those things kind of running together. But I think I really struggled for a long time figuring out what that looked like. And to be honest, I think kind of the glory that's possible through sport was something that I was chasing after hard. I think if you want to find personal glory, sports is a good place to look.
True.
There's a lot of it out there to be had. And so my identity was really, really wrapped up in my athletic accomplishments and my pursuit of athletics, even though I was desiring to walk with the Lord. But that wasn't really, my athletics were not at all surrendered to Him. And so, that's a big part of my story, I think, for years and years. And my choice to come to Messiah, was God at work in my desires to see him like align those two things, even though I was still struggling to figure out what that looked like. And those years here at Messiah were probably some of the most significant growth years of my life. But I'd say particularly my growth in my relationship with the Lord, like starting in the senior year of my high school through the first couple of years of college is where I grew in my relationship with the Lord the most. And, what happened is as I loved the Lord more, he reordered my loves, and so my love for sport changed and my desire for my own personal glory started to shift more to my desire for his glory. And then it changed a lot about how I perceived sport, how I went after sport, where my identity was. And that, that's kind of continued to be a pursuit of my life. And that's had a lot of ups and downs, and it's been challenged in a lot of different ways, still challenged as a coach. But I think it really led into my desire to be in coaching, to help other athletes kind of grow through some of those same things and to treasure the Lord more than they treasure, their sport or what their sport could bring them. And post-college, I had a lot of experiences with sports ministry, and that's where was really cool to see as I gave kind of sport back to the Lord, the Lord gave it back to me and just provided all these open doors for me to travel the world, to see how God was using sport to build relationships with people and, further the kingdom in every corner of the world in ways that I loved. And it was like, wow, I could do these things together. That was super exciting to me. And a lot of those experiences I had when I came back to Messiah, it was like, oh, I want all those experiences for all of our athletes here, like the guys I coach and athletics broader. And so Aroma, the sports ministry program, really was birthed out of God's vision for how do we help more athletes understand their identity in me first, and then understand how they could use those gifts and passions to grow closer to me, to worship me, to build my kingdom. So that's kind of been the pursuit of both my coaching and the sports ministry
for
program.
sure. No, cool. No, thanks for sharing that. I think that's awesome. I think it's so true about that identity piece. I know for myself too, personally, it's so easy to get wrapped up in that. And there's so much affirmation and stuff. And especially, I think in our culture today too, of everything's achieved and whatever. I think it kind of naturally ties into that identity piece. And just so interesting how such a good thing with sports or achievement stuff the enemy can still try to use to kind of work against what because God's given us these abilities and give us these gifts, and these sports as an outlet for that. So no, thanks.
I mean, God's grace is so good in that, because I think we're such a mess in those ways, and I look back and I'm like, what a mess I was. I looked, yesterday, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm still doing some of these things, and I'm but God's been gracious to kind of teach me along the way a lot about that.
For sure. No, that's cool. I think it's super cool how you kind of tie the Aroma here, excuse me, with the sports ministry and tie that into the actual athletics. And I know one thing that's big for both of us is Proverbs 27:17 is as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. I wish we had one of your emblems here, but it says it right across the top. If you look up Messiah soccer, your kind of your crest, you call it. So when we think about that verse, for your team, as iron sharpens iron, what kind of comes to mind, or when you're kind of talking with your guys about this ironing, sharpening iron, what are the main either goals you're trying to get out, or what kind of either comes to mind for you that you try to kind of relate to the team, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, that's been a foundational verse for the Messiah men's soccer program since beyond when I was a player. And so I think the first thing I think about is just the way that was true for me in my time as a player. My teammates, my coaches had, such an impact on me in that time. And so for me, that personifies, that verse. It's just I was sharpened by those other men in my life during that time in my life. And I think that's remained core to who our team is, in a desire to take, a period of time, 4 years in a guy's life that are really, really foundational in college. Whether you're in college or not, those years, you're starting to decide who am I going to be, what am I going to care about, what am I going to value, and who you surround yourself with is huge in that. And so I think what we would desire here is that this would be an environment where people could grow, people could be sharpened, and ultimately people could be drawn to the Lord. I mean, just believe stronger and stronger every day. I can't imagine like life without the Lord and without walking in the ways that he's laid out for us. I see more and more how like just how loving and fatherly God is to say like, hey, connect yourself to me, and like everything that you desire in life like is met in me, and is anything outside of me is like destruction in your life, you know. And so I think we want this place to be an environment where students can experience that and grow, you know, so connected to the Lord that as they leave here, you know, it's not the community itself, it's that connectedness to the Lord, and putting a group of people together who are chasing after the same thing, so that they would continue to have a hunger at every phase of their life for the same type of community, be that type of person.
Yeah, no, I think that's huge too. And just like, I like how you said, like, hey, like once you leave here, we don't like Messiah University or Messiah soccer team.
It's not a brand.
It's just like, this is just another tool that God can like use to hopefully bring you closer to him. So then when you get out of here, it's actually that relationship, not the people here, even though you hope there's like relationships continue on for a while.
And like being at a college or being on a team, like those are really unique environments. I think they're some of the best environments for fostering that.
Yeah.
But it is hard for people as they leave those type of environments and they get into environments that are less conducive to that, like how to still fight for those things in their life and not say like, oh, that was just like something I enjoyed at that phase of my life. It's like, how do you believe that God desires that for you at every phase of your life? And you may just have to be more intentional about it, or start over again in some ways sometimes.
So kind of going on like with that, it's a kind of idea of mine, like how do you guys like, either whether it's through Aroma or through like the men's soccer team, like how do you try to prepare, because there's only like, you don't really know when you get out in the real world, but like how do you prepare those guys, like whether that's through mentorship on the team or through like, what are some practical tools you like try to use with the guys so that they actually are prepared to make that step?
I mean, I think there's both like talking about values and conceptual things as well as practical things. And I think the magic is when you're connecting those two things really well. So, I mean, we're talking constantly about just kind of the value of relationships and, you know, whether it's in our team context or in Aroma, just understanding that like deep relationships is something that we were created for, like being vulnerable, sharing one another's burdens, like being real with people, submitting to accountability, to be willing to say to somebody like, hey, I want these things and I want you to be able to speak into my life, you know, when I'm off the mark, you know, like that's not real common in our culture. That's really hard. Yeah. But
especially for guys too.
Especially for guys. Sure. Yeah. And so, you know, some of it is just like spending time together, like creating opportunities for people to build relationships to where they would get to that level of trust and be able to have that level of vulnerability. And so, you know, I see traveling internationally on a sports ministry trip, it's about ministering to the people that we're going to serve with and among, but it's also about like a deep, meaningful relationship with our group that we're taking that allows them to open up and to share hard things and to talk about what they're wrestling with in life. So I think it's trying to build habits of that. I think as a leader, like that's something that I have to model as well, like be willing to.
Yeah, if you could speak into that, that like a little bit, like what does, just like as a leader, sorry, not trying to cut you off, but like as like a leader, like with, obviously you're pouring yourself out a lot as a coach, as the director of Aroma, like how do you use that example yourself, or like what are some practices like outside of here that's been good, or maybe there is people here too, maybe that's
there's a lot of ways to go with that. I mean, I would say, I think first in my own life, right, that has to be important to me and be lived out by me before I can really like translate that and share that with others. And so I think for me, it's really important that I'm continuing to fight for community in my own life. I think being a part of some pretty deep relationships with other guys, meeting on a regular basis, being willing to share vulnerably, investing in those relationships. Like that's so core to me being the man that God created me to be and keeping me on track. And I think I wouldn't be able to do that with student athletes if that wasn't like in place in my own life. And then I would say with student athletes, like, again, I think relationship and trust is really core. And I try to really, gear my days and my weeks around building relationships, which is really hard. It's kind of against the flow of like what work feels like it should be or what it, and so, and I tend to be wired fairly task oriented. It's easier for me to get in to the office and work through a checklist at my desk, but that's not really why I do what I do. There's times that I need to do that, but I also need to be really intentional in my day to say, hey, what player am I going to have lunch with today so I can like just get to know them better and ask them questions about how life's going. Who can I, take a kayak ride with on the Yellow Breeches on our campus, so that like when difficult things come in their life, like we have that type of relationship where we could go deeper. So I think any type of ministry really needs to flow from relationship. I think that's what we see in the life of Jesus, and try to model that.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Men of Iron podcast. Men, are you ready for a game plan that transforms your life? If you find yourself searching for more or feel like your life isn't unfolding as expected, or maybe you're just striving to reach your fullest potential, we've created a Man's Game Plan to help you thrive. Man's Game Plan is a 5-session course designed by Men of Iron with the purpose of helping men develop a game plan for their core 5: faith, family, friends, fitness, and finances. A Man's Game Plan refreshed and redesigned for your men's group. Find out more at menofiron.org. And like kind of going off that, this is like a little bit similar in that, but like for the guys on the team, you guys have a very strong culture, I would say. I think that's something you guys have taken a lot of time, like whether it's like recruiting guys to come here. I think just like for guys in general out there, like they're like, okay, like you're talking about this community piece, and like what do you look for either in the recruiting or like how do you build that culture in your team? So because like we just talked about the importance of surrounding ourselves with like good godly guys, and like whether that's as a mentor or as that's like just having friends that are godly, like what do you either look for? I know it's different, probably looking for like a recruit, but like how have you guys, like I guess 2 questions in that, and you can answer whatever you want, but like either how do you foster that culture? Because culture is this thing that's like hard to fight for and hard to get, but like it can be quickly lost. Or like how do you even just kind of build that community in itself?
I mean, I think starting with the kind of the recruitment into that culture, I think finding people who are the right fit for your culture is really important. So whether it's me as a team or I'm hiring staff to be a part of the sports ministry program, or a businessman is figuring out who they're going to have be a part of, their business. Like I think I would say it's really, really important, I think, to be very upfront about who you are and the values that you have as a business or a program, the vision that you have. Never to shortcut that or to soften that or steer away from that. I think it could be tempting as a coach to sit down with a really good player and feel like, oh, I don't know if they're into that, and start to like move a different direction. I think we have to be really disciplined to be like, no, this is what's most important to us, and then trust that like people who are not interested in that will not be interested in being a part of it, and those who are will gravitate toward that and be hungry for that. And so I think we're looking as best we can in the recruitment process for people who hear what our culture is about and are on the edge of their seat. Like, that's what I'm looking for. That's what I want. I think those are the kinds of people that we want to bring in, because then they're going to be about those things when they're going to be hungry. And then I think, some of that continues, I think, as you have your team. I think you have to constantly be putting the vision and the values in front of them, and holding them to a standard, so there's good communication of what those values are. There's lots of opportunities to practice those and even fall short in those. And hopefully a humility to be like, to have accountable conversations to say like, this isn't aligning with like who we want to be, like what can we do? How can we get better at that? How can we extend grace to one another when we fall short in that? But like, I think you have to be relentless in like protecting that culture. in those ways.
Yeah, that's cool. I think that's cool. Like a good phrase. I think relentless in protecting
Mm-hmm.
that, and then just that. I think that, like we just said, like that grace and like when people like allowing people to fall short and like, and then also, but there is like accountability and there's like real, like it's not like, oh, it's all right. Like no, it's like this is stuff that's important to us. And
we kind of in our soccer program we use a progression where, as a recruiter, a freshman, it's our expectation that they would understand what our core values are, that they would know what they are. As a sophomore, that they would start to be owning them for themselves, being like, I'm not just living these out because somebody's making me, but like I'm owning these, I want these. And then as an upperclassman, that they would be modeling those for younger players, that they would now really be accountable to living those out. Because I think the best discipleship that happens within our programs is peer-to-peer in many ways, and it's a younger, male or female athlete looking at a teammate that's 3 years older than them, saying like, I want to be like them, and they're investing in me, they care about me, and like they look like what I want to look like in 3 years.
Yeah, for sure. That's cool. I think this would be interesting. So you're like this, you're the assistant coach to the head coach. What, as people, how is this? If you're like working in setting, or guys like that out there that are like working in different settings, you're out, like your assistant coach, I know you and Brad like work close together, and it's not probably as different, but how do you, as guys, I think our pride can get in the way, like a lot of different things. And I know some people, like we always like guys, like we always want to be the head guy, we want to be the number one, we want to be the guy in charge all the time. How have you and Brad or Coach Picardi, like how, or maybe even for you personally, how have you, or how's that relationship been, just to like just serve and serve together, because that's what you're trying to do at the end of the day, and like you guys like succeed together. And I think that's like a common, I think it's an easy thing to get away from, of like, just like I want to be the guy, this is my world, like everyone else is just living in it. Like how have you guys kind of like embodied that, or what's that kind of relationship look like?
No, I think that's intriguing to people sometimes. I think it's a rarity to be a D3 assistant coach for 16 years. And people are like, what's wrong with you? Like, why aren't you trying for more than that? But, I would often tell people, I just think like Brad is just an extremely humble guy. It's something I really value in him. And he, from the get-go, has always been willing to share the load. I think sometimes as the top guy, you can feel threatened by someone who has a lot to contribute, or you can embrace that and be like, this is going to contribute to what we're after. And I think Brad at every point has been willing to release things to me. He's been willing to kind of breathe life into areas that I have giftedness in, see things that I have giftedness in that are compliments to him. And I think similarly, like I love working with someone that complements me. There's weaknesses I have that are strengths in Brad, and I think that I think there's times, of course, that there's always that like, oh, I'd like to make these decisions, but I think when you trust the person that you're working with and you see that you have ways that you can contribute, can serve, I think that it's kind of a game changer. And so I think we've always felt like we're working as a team, and he treats me like another head coach, and I think that title or that ability to like make all the decisions is not something that's attractive to me, compared to the impact that I get to have by being a part of something I really believe in. And I really feel like I'm well suited for the role that I have.
Oh, for sure.
And so I think reminding myself of that when maybe an outsider's questions or perspective might be leading me down a path that I should feel like I shouldn't be doing this, or I'm settling for something.
No, that's good. No, I appreciate that. That's cool. That's a good word. I appreciate it. I think, even when I was here too, like kind of seen that afterwards too, in just conversations, I see that humility from both of you guys, and just that, like something you guys both believe in, so you both want to do whatever it takes in those certain roles to work for something greater. But like in terms of the actual sport, or like soccer overall, or like maybe in a region, what are like ways that you kind of seen kind of God at work, whether it's like through your camps or different stuff like that, or maybe even bigger, like as a soccer overall, like where maybe like even throughout your journey, like where have you seen God kind of like use the sport as like a conduit to like reach more people, or like, I'm not sure if you have a story or just like some experience, or just like maybe just throughout the years of like I know you talked about a bunch, but like, yeah, kind of how has God used that as like a main piece of that? I'm not sure if there's exact.
Yeah. I think I'm just reminded again and again of just what a powerful tool sport is for connecting with people. I just think like you don't have to convince people to be interested in sport. It's not a method. We don't have to have a method for that. True. Like, hey, let's see if we can get people interested in sports, you know?
That's true.
And so it's something that people are already interested in. They're already involved in. It's an easy place to go to people. And I think it lends itself so well to building deep relationships. And so, you know, at the core of, you know, the gospel is right relationship, you know, with God and with people. And so if sport can get you into a place where you can develop a deep relationship with somebody, you have opportunity to talk about the things that are most important in life. And for me, at least, I've seen very few things be as easy to do that for. And that's not because it's the only way, but it's the way that I'm wired. It's something that's been important to me in my life. I've walked that journey of being disillusioned by sport, not finding what I was hoping for in sport. And there's a lot of people in that boat. And so I think I'm just reminded again and again, whether it's the context of, you know, an 8-year-old at camp, or I'm on the other side of the world, like where you're driving in a Jeep and you think you're about to fall off, you know, the edge of the earth. And then there's a soccer field and like 100 people playing, you know, that like, I just believe like all things, like when we surrender them to the Lord, he can use them. He created it in the first place, and he creates everything for his glory. So sport must be for the purpose of his glory. That's just, that fits everything that he does. Yeah. And so, that's how I desire to use it. And I've seen that be true. I want to see that be more true. I want to empower our students, to be able to be ambassadors of that as well after they leave.
Cool. No, that's awesome. That's really cool. I appreciate that. Yeah. And then kind of like the last two questions kind of as we wrap up here. I know we talked like a lot about like identity and stuff, and you mentioned that's like a big part of your story. I think legacy is like a thing that kind of gets tied into that. And I think it's often like we see like all these statues outside like these professional stadiums or whatnot. And like there's this like legacy that can be very worldly, or this legacy that could be like honor like God more and whatever. I think it just like the identity piece kind of gets wrapped up and normally leads to legacy of one or the other. For you, like when you're done as a coach, when you can't run 5-minute miles anymore, like what is like a legacy that like if someone came to like whatever, like your grandkids or whoever would be someday, like what's like if they came to like, okay, who was Aaron Faro, like what did he stand for, like what's that like legacy piece that you kind of would want to be like remembered by? I know that's a big question.
I mean, I think you know, Christ likeness is something that comes to my mind when I think of like the life of Jesus and what he invested his time in doing when he was on earth. I think that's really important. It's just like, wow, God came to earth. Like, what did he do? You know, like what was he like? You know, like how could I be like him? How could I do the things that he did? You know, I think the way that he poured into people, you know, and I think about his disciples, how he spent time with them, how they got to kind of envision their own lives after him. I think to me, that's like the ultimate legacy, you know, and then ultimately his sacrifice. You know, first of all, I think I want my legacy to be something where I'm like, I helped move people toward knowing who God is and experiencing life with him, because I'm just like, there's no better life than life with God. And so like if I can help move people in that direction, and then for that to become, you know, for that to replicate, for them to then invite other people, you know, I think there's nothing brings me greater joy than to catch up with an alum who spent time here, who says like, hey, this impacted me in this way, and now look what I'm doing. I'm doing that now with other people. And you're just like, wow, you know, I can imagine Jesus in heaven a few years later sitting back watching his disciples do stuff that he did with them and being like, they're doing it now on their own, you know, like that must have pumped him up, you know. And so I think in a similar way, like the coach in me desires to see them reach potential,
Yeah.
and then, to be able to use that to influence other people.
For sure. No, that's great. That's awesome. I think it's super cool. And also, I know, like, I don't know, I just think from me watching you, whether it's been like Aroma Chapels or, I think it's cool. Like, I've seen you do that. And like, you're not just saying that like in our podcast here for like half an hour, like that stuff you actually live out. And I think it's cool too. Like, even from that identity piece, like, obviously you love soccer and I love Aroma, but I think it's cool. Like, I know you well enough that's like, okay, if you weren't doing this thing, it's like, I don't have any doubt that you'd still be doing that in whatever role you're in. So I think it's a testament to you and to the work that God's done in your life and just the way you live your life. So I appreciate that. And so, yeah, thanks for that. And thanks for all you do here. So, yeah, I think just to wrap up, just like any last thoughts or like if you had like maybe like one piece of advice or anything for like either younger guy, I know you work a lot with younger guys or just guys out there, like how would you kind of bring this all together? Or like, is there anything that you would really want to, I don't even know, like if you could summarize everything that we talked about or just like some important stuff for you, like is there anything you would kind of just like wrap up?
Yeah. No, thanks for this conversation, first of all. And I really appreciate the mission of Men of Iron. Like it's really easy to get excited about what you guys are doing. And some of that comes from, I just think there's a huge need in our culture for men to be all of who God's created them to be, and I think when men are not being all that God has created them to be, there's just a huge gap and a huge ripple through every sector of our culture, in family life, in church life, in society. And so just deeply believe what you're doing. And I think what you're doing, what I'm trying to do is connect people to the truth of God's word, to say like, hey, I'm your creator, I'm your father, like I know what's best for you, I want you're thriving, like this is where it's at, you know. And so as we look into scripture and we see the building of community and the church functioning as the church ought to function, and men sharpening each other, like as we follow in that, I think we avoid so many pitfalls that we're seeing men fall into, and we see men able to kind of step into God's best and thrive. So I love what you're doing. I love to be able to speak into that and encourage men who are chasing after that, and know like for every man who's chasing after that, there's just like hundreds of them around that like need that as well. So like, drag a few guys into it with you, like
that's true.
Chase it together. I think men need that.
For sure. Cool. Well, thank you again, Aaron. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. And you guys, thanks for listening. Hopefully this is encouraging to you. Thanks for tuning in this week, and talk to you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Men of Iron podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. At Men of Iron, we exist to change a culture one man at a time, and we'd love to have you partner with us. So go to menofiron.org to see how you can get involved, or donate at menofiron.org/donate.